All right, welcome everybody. Monarch Family Chiropractic Tuesday night spinal workshop. This week is all on using and knowing your self-care home tools. So we talk a lot about how important it is to do the work, right? And a portion of that happens in the office, and the bigger portion happens educating yourself, right? Being on these workshops and knowing more about why we do and function the way we do, why we move or don't move the way we do. And again, creating that clear signal between brain and body in communication. And a lot of that communication path, if you haven't been on the workshops that talk about our curves, our spinal function, the support of that communication, that is really based on many things that we talk about when we go through tools today is going to be based on, do you have the proper curves in your spine? And so when we've done the workshops that are tech neck or healthy curves, if those are ones you've been on, then you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't been on those or you're new in the practice and haven't seen any of those yet, know that they're recorded and that they'll come back up in different months of the year to be able to be on them or at them live. And what that means is, like we were talking about this week in the office, we want banana curves in our spine. We want a curve in our neck, our mid back, and our low back from the side view, right? So the quick, when we have our bananas still in the office today, right? So we were walking around with these all week this week because this curve is super important that we have in our spine. When you're looking at me this way, that we have a curve in our neck here, that we have this direction curve here, and that we have this direction curve, let me step away so you can see me, in our low back, right? All of those are healthy curves that allows our body to distribute its weight evenly over all the joints, ligaments, muscles, structure, bone in our system. And a lot of our home tools that we give you guys are based around what happens when we don't have those curves, because it compresses into the spine. So it literally makes us shorter over our lifespan. We lose height, and it creates more compression and pressure. So the space between each bone is our disc space, and that's like a jelly cushion. And that's what keeps things from compressing or the bones from touching. So we want that space, right? That kind of gives us that height, and that gives us that room so that joints can move and rub and bend and not necessarily touch and rub. When they touch and rub, that is what eventually creates arthritis, degeneration and joint disease and bone disease in the spine and in all joints, right? A knee joint, a shoulder, a hip, an ankle, a wrist. So when we talk about the things that you can do at home, it's because we want to give you the tools to help change the trajectory of the overall health and longevity of your spine and the healthy movements that it should have. So there are a gazillion movements of the spine that we have, and Doc has pre-recorded or past recorded that are on our YouTube channel. So if you guys didn't know we had a YouTube channel, it is Monarch Family Chiropractic. Go there on YouTube, search us. You'll see the butterfly logo. You'll see that it's us. And there's a ton of movement videos that are in there that will reference a lot of what we're going to talk about tonight, and movements that I'll show you based on areas of the spine that need that movement. So when we talk about things that you can be doing at home, it's because we know that we need to remove the subluxation, the adjustments happening in the office to do that piece. And then there's functional movements that have to happen, that your body has to regain a new way of doing things and a new pattern of doing things so that we can kind of undo what it knows and create a better pattern for it to have a healthier longevity of health in your spine. So we're going to use the chair. We're going to use some tools. We're going to use a few different things that are the very basics in spinal hygiene and health that are your responsibility to do at home in and around your adjustments. And most of them, it's every day. Most of them you're going to do in far as stretches or some of those short things that take 2 to 3 minutes is what we end up calling a lot in the office. You hear us use the term postural interruptions. Those are movements that we want to interrupt our day-to-day of, like sitting all day or standing all day or doing a repetitive motion a lot throughout the day, whether it's in work and or in play, that can change the balance or the patterns and the symmetry of our spine and our movements. So The more we are symmetrical, top to bottom, left to right, the better off our joints age and the better movement and function that we have. So there's lots of other workshops that are going to reference a lot more of those things in depth, but this one's going to cover now what type of home tools you could be doing or exercises, stretches you could be doing with very simple and or little to minimal anything at home. Okay, so we're going to go into a few stretches that aren't going to be the most intense ones or the ones that are going to really involve a lot of crisscross patterning and in more advanced ways of doing things. Those are ones that I don't want to give anybody that's new to the idea that they should be doing those yet. So there may be some of you on the line that I know are there that have been patients for years that you're like, oh, like these are ones I did 2 years ago. And they're ones that are really important every day for our movement. And the more advanced ones, we may go into more, through the videos that we've already mentioned, or I may reference them, but not show you all of them today because we're limited with time. But the tools of things, we're going to go through the basics. So we always want to warm up our spine just like we do when we go to work out. We don't exercise and we shouldn't just go cold turkey out for a run or right into a lift, or even an activity like, swinging the golf club or swinging the baseball bat or the volleyball or movements like that. So with everything, we want to warm up the body. So a great way with warming up the neck is just very simple stretches in multi directions because we're three-dimensional beings and the joints move in different, in all planes. So gentle stretches to the left and right. And I have everybody hold those each for at least 20 seconds. That is stretching the muscles that attach here. The ones as you come down and forward, where chin is going to go towards the shoulder or armpit, then chin's going to go towards this shoulder and armpit, using the same hand to guide the head over. I am not pulling. I am just letting the weight of my hand rest on my head and letting my chin drop to where it feels comfortable. If this isn't a stretch or you're very flexible and that doesn't feel like much through the side of the neck, then I tell people tuck this hand behind, and that just draws this shoulder down and it allows for a deeper stretch. Other side, just that mirror image this way. And again, I'm feeling a stretch now on the back of the neck muscles. The more important ones that we forget to stretch, or most people don't know to stretch, are the front of the neck. So those stretch, that is because if you don't have that curve in your spine, we have that forward head posture, right? Where our ears don't sit over our shoulders, they sit in front like this. So if you have a spine that you've looked at on x-ray with us, or your ears sit a lot further in front of your shoulders, that forward posture creates a lot of weight of the head then on top of the mid back, the neck, and the low back. So when we're stretched, what ends up happening is the more you are tipped forward, these front muscles really anchor and pull you and get really, really tight. And the ones back here is where you feel it. You feel tight through here, neck and shoulders, or into the shoulder blade. Most of that comes from these. So these neck muscles here that you see as someone turns and tilts their head are really the ones that are pulling you more forward. And then these are just fighting to hold your head back up over yourself, over your shoulders. So the motion that most people don't do is stretch these to take pressure off of this back here. So you're going to let the head drop to your side and your chin is going to go up to the opposite direction so that you feel the stretch on that side. And then as I tip to my right, my chin goes up to my left, whatever angle, then I feel a stretch on this side. So there's a few things I'm going to demonstrate, but then mostly I'm going to talk so that I'm going to have Erin, our lovely new chiropractic advocate, join us to where she can do the motion she can be doing, and I can be talking through it and explaining what it should be looking like or feeling like. And where to take it and where not to take it, because everybody's different. So there is no, you got to go this far. I'm not a no pain, no gain when it comes to stuff like this. You don't want to overstretch. You can stretch too much and you can stretch too far. So we want to just go to comfort level, never pain. If there's pain, then that's just not one you're supposed to do yet, or your spine can't do it yet. Or the muscles are so guarded that they can't allow you there yet. And the spine is literally talking to you, telling you stop there. When there's not a lot of space between each vertebra in the joint, then you can't stretch as far, you can't tip as far, you can't move as far because there's not space there to get there. The bones start kind of touching and rubbing. So we want to create that space. So we're going to show you some of the exercises now for mostly neck and mid and low back that create that space. The middle rib cage doesn't tend to have the space compression nearly as much as we see up top and down below, sort of just as bridging that gap between with the rib cage. So a lot of that structure kind of helps, I feel like, stabilize that area, and it may be really tight, but it doesn't get the compression like the neck and the low back do. So we're going to grab Erin. Come on over, my dear. Please. So sitting in the chair for me, I'm going to make sure I'm out of the way. Okay, I'm going to talk louder, hopefully so that everybody can hear me, because I'm going to step further from the mic. We're going to just do some of those motions with Erin so that you see where she's at doing them as I point to things. So, honey, I'm going to have you scooch even closer and face like the TV. Okay, so the simple neck motion, gently to the side. And the stretch should be right across here. And then nose tilted towards up, left armpit or shoulder, and tips down. And if she was going to use her hand to help, it's going to be that hand that she's tipping towards. So if she took her left hand and just set it on the top of her head and gently guided the chin down further, if it needs to be there, great. The stretch though should be more on the back side of the neck there as it meets the shoulder here. Then that third direction that most of us don't do is tilting back to the left. Get out of the way of the view. There you go. But chin goes to the right, right? So the stretch is here in the front. And then opposite side, right? So right, down and in for the stretch here, back here, and then back to neutral, and then head goes up, back, chin goes up to the opposite side, and then that stretch is here. And 90% of the time, one side's easier than the other, and one side feels tighter than the other. So always stretch both equally, but you're going to start finding where your asymmetries are, right? Where one side works harder or is more, it compensates for something else. So then when we get into how do we hydrate once we've stretched and warmed up, how do we hydrate those discs? How do we open up that space? How do we give more room where there isn't room? We do that in many ways. The couple tools that you guys, if you don't already have at home, will most likely get if you're working on your curve. We're going to cover 2 of the 3 that we tend to use the most in the office with patients that have become their home tools that you use on your time, so you can fit it into your routine daily, or at least 5 days a week. And you can build up in time where you're starting at, like, say 3, 4, 5 minutes, and you're working up to 15 to 20 minutes at a time doing the exercise. So it's like you're going to start beginner and you're going to go intermediate and advanced as your body's ready, and as your spine has more room and mobility to move there. So it's kind of like yoga for the spine, or it's the rehab for spine. That's very similar to when, if you don't have a curve, it's very similar to how I describe as orthodontics with teeth. You know, some people go and wear braces for 3-4 years to correct the pretty curve of their teeth and their upper and lower palate so that everything's in good alignment. And that's so things don't decay and degenerate and age faster, right? Same thing with our spine. It just protects way more important things. Teeth are replaceable, and we can do replacing parts and pieces there to kind of get them through our lifetime. Spinal bones cannot be replaced. There's nothing that we've figured out, there's nothing that science is at there where you can replace or come close to replacing an original part. So that's why it's so important that these joints and the spine stay healthy so that they don't age faster and wear out on us sooner in life when we want to still be active and mobile. So when we do something to create that curve or space in the spine, we start with some simple fulcrums, is what you'll hear us call them. And there's different types of them. So this is a fulcrum. That's the side view of it. That's what that looks like. A lot of you, if you have this is just covered. It's dark gray. And this is the low back support piece that people use. There's a couple of those. If you have to actually work on the low back curve, then that looks different than that. It's more like this. And then there's what we call a Deneroll, and this is just sort of the name and brand, but it's a firmer version of this, a little more intense version than this. So again, beginner and intermediate, advanced as well, based on what you can tolerate, where your spine's at, how much space it has, how long a curve has been lacking or not been there, usually determines where we start you. So we're going to demonstrate with Erin what this looks like when you're laying on them, so that you understand placement, and everybody has some specific placements that we may do, especially with this one, based on where their curves are lacking. But overall, the majority of people are using these the same. It's just how long you're on them at a time. So we're going to go to the table. I'm going to have Erin lay on the one behind you, honey. Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to scoot chair over. Okay. I'm going to have you lay on your back. Okay. For me, please, face up. So we're going to do this as best we can at the angle the table's at. But when someone is using their home tools to work on, again, supporting their curve, creating space, and creating stretch here, relaxation here. The very vertical side, straight up and down side, is what's going to go against Erin's shoulders. So when I bring this underneath her, it's going to look like this. So this is against the shoulders. This angle part that drops is going to be where her head rests over here, and her neck is going to sit right into here. These are all designed very specifically by neurologists and chiropractors who do angles and corrective, like biophysics. So there is nothing we use in this office or that I've ever used that I don't use myself or have used myself or is not heavily researched. So in this day and age of Dr. Google and Amazon, you could buy anything yourself. I'm going to give the disclaimer of, if it's something you purchased online and I have not seen it physically, at least from my perspective, to approve it and say, yes, that is or similar to what I want you to use for your curve and what I see in your x-rays, then it is not approved. And I share no responsibility for, like, I'm going to tell you to use it this way, and because I said use this way means use that way. 100% false. So if there's something you're using on your own, no, you're on your own. And that's not something that necessarily compares to the angles and the degrees that have gone into the research of these specific tools and the way they're designed to be used. That part I have background, we have schooling and teaching in, and we know what it is that what the goal is and what we're after. There's a lot of knockoff things like there that you could go buy. So just know that I'm going to support what I know, what I've researched, what I've studied, and what I've personally used and been using in practice for going on 13 years now. So this background is one of my specialties that I love helping people address when they're just feeling like they've plateaued or they're not getting further in some of their care. It can be because some of the support structure is lacking, and that's never been looked at with them before with other chiropractors or other doctors, physicians, or whatnot. So when this is a piece that's part of your care, it's done very specifically and done very specifically driven to what your x-rays say. So Erin is also going to use a low back piece because we want to support her low back curve while we're working on her neck curve. So this piece is the supportive piece. Everybody should have something supporting their low back while they're laying on their back and working on any other area. If the low back curve is the piece you need support with, which is not usually as frequent as the neck, then that's a different piece and it looks similar to the neck. And we're not necessarily reviewing that in this video today, but it would be similar in where we place it. So low back support goes under first, and then we support the neck. So knees will always be bent at close to like 45, 90 degrees. If you want to tuck pillows here, that's fine. You don't have to hold them up yourself, but they cannot be straight. We need to take pressure off the low back by bending the knees. So knees always have some bend in them. And then we lift up the low back and pelvis and slide this under her so that this part is under the low back, the rounding part of your back. This part is under your tush. So you're sitting with your booty on this part. Low back is supported. Let me get it under, yeah, under this piece. So lift on up for me, Erin. And again, place that in the small of your back. Okay. And for some people, this feels awkward because they never take pressure off their low back and their erector muscles along their spine are very taut and tight. So sometimes just laying on this feels like, whoo, that's like a stretch or feels like it's challenged. And then usually within 2 to 3 minutes, it relaxes because it's like, oh, I finally have support. I can just lay and relax over this. I don't have to be engaged. So know that even sometimes a small cushion like that feels like a big cushion. And that's okay. It should relax after about a minute or two. And again, it will get more relaxed if you bend your knees. So now this cushion is going under Erin's neck, vertical side, straight up side against her shoulder. So you're going to bring it all the way to the patient's shoulder or to your shoulder and let the head relax back over it. Okay. And then head relaxes back over it. I realize the angle of the camera at this view, you can't see that right on, but that's the view of you are relaxed. You are not doing anything else while you do your postural exercises. You are not on a phone. You are not holding anything, and you're not moving. You are letting everything relax and open up so that these can stretch and these can do the work they're supposed to do, is working into that banana shaped curve. So Erin's not done this before, so I'm not leaving her on this. When you remove it, you take the neck piece out first. Go ahead and let the head rest back down. And then you lift up the hips and take out the hip piece and let that hips back down. So you do it in reverse order. Again, the time you're supposed to be on it, we give that prescription to you. So we're not going to go into any depth there. Most people want, by the time you take it home, you're at least able to do it 4 to 5 minutes on your own after assistance with us a few times in the office to make sure you feel comfortable on it and we're not having any adverse reactions, I guess I would say. And you're doing those warm-ups before you lay on this, and then you're doing a small warm-up after. So like a cool down, when you work out, you want to cool down and relax the spine. The more you are on that for any length of time, the more your body knows that it's been stretched and worked. So it's like a workout, even though you're just laying there on it. So you don't want to, when you've taken all the weight off of your head or low back, you don't want to suddenly sit up and say, okay, now body muscles engage in the neck and hold my 12-pound head. So we want to, again, kind of move the spine before we sit up and say, now hold the whole weight of me. So what Erin's going to do is she's going to turn her head left and turn it right. While her head stays on the table, she's just going to turn as far as comfortable to the left and to the right, about 3 or 4 times at least each side. And then she's going to tuck the chin down without lifting her head off the table. Yep. So tucking chin in and then tilting the head back and looking towards the ceiling. And you're going to do tucks and tilts, lefts and rights, about 5 times each way. So that's that cool down and reminding your neck muscles now it's time for you to engage when I sit back up. The longer you do this, this will make more sense. If you're on it for 10, 15 minutes, your muscles they've been stretched, they've not been doing anything. So it's different retraining. You want to do a cool down like you've done a warm up. And then you are always going to bring kind of knees into chest to stretch out the low back. And then you're always going to roll to your side when you come up. You're never going to sit straight up. So doing a few stretches each way, at least 30 seconds to a minute, you've done a cool down, and then you can sit back up. So now when we do the low back, we're going to show wobbling. Wobbling is the motion that creates that disc space and that hydration into the discs and the fluid around the discs in the joint to be more active and to be there. Our spine and our joints dehydrate throughout the day. They're the most plump and hydrated when we wake up, when we've rested all night and not been upright and vertical. It's more, they get that pressure off of them when we're horizontal. So when we sleep. So when we do this kind of motion to warm up and loosen and hydrate and pump fluids back in and around the discs and of the joints of the low back, we use the wobble cushion. So another home tool is using your wobble cushion. So we'll let Erin do this one as well. This is a spinal disc or hydration disc for the low back. A vestibular disc is a lot of times what you'll see it called. These you can find on somewhere like an Amazon or in a health section of a sports store. So we're going to set this on a chair, and Erin's going to sit right over it, so very centered on it. And you want to be in a chair where your feet can touch the floor. So you don't see that she's touching the floor, but she is. And that she's not in something too high. So the motion is going to be gently rolling the body forward. So like rounding the low back and kind of pushing your back towards the chair, your spine towards the chair. As you let your air out, and as you take a breath in, you're going to arch the low back and kind of jut your belly forward. Exactly. And so you're going to do at least a set of 10 to 20 of these. So back and forth is 1 repetition, 20 repetitions. So Erin's opening up, taking a breath in as she arches that low back, and then she's rounding kind of that cat-cow, rounding the spine in towards the belly, or belly button in towards the spine, and rounding the low back. And that is working on that forward back motion of the discs and the joints. Then the second direction is going left and right. So now opening up the sides of the disc, the sides of our hips. So Erin is going to drop her left hip towards the edge of the chair. Yep. And kind of as your shoulders go to the right. Yep. So you're going to go side to side. And again, only where you feel comfortable. Her feet are flat on the floor, her ankles aren't crossed, and she's tipping left and right. We first do it with no arm movements, and then we're going to add some arm movements to create some different movement through a little higher part of the low back and hips. So now, Erin, your arms are going to be here. So as you tip your hips to the left, your arms kind of go down, elbows go down to the right. You got it. And sometimes then you feel that more at the top of the hip, a different part of the spine, or adjacent pieces to the spine at your hips. And then motion of overhead. So as your hips go left, your arms go right. Yep, hands go right. There we go. So all of this opens up different areas of the spine, different levels of the spine. So we're starting really low at like the hips and tailbone. And then we get up here into the kind of mid to low back and more of the rib cage area, which is a hard area to stretch. So those are things that are really good postural interruptions to do. And those discs are easy to have like at a workstation. You don't have to have like a big fit ball around. Using something like that, you can then throw under a chair when you just want to sit on your regular chair. So those are awesome tools to have at the office. Some people's offices are now their houses, and people aren't going back into their offices. So that's a great tool to have at home regardless, or have at your office where you can do a set of 20 of those a couple times a day and just rehydrate the spine and the discs. The workshop from last week that Doc did was, sitting is the new smoking. We know that statistics show sitting in a sense is killing us. We are spending too much time sitting. So when people have desk jobs, computer jobs, or things that that's the posture they're in a lot of the day, we have to undo a lot of that compression movement. And so this is a great way to interrupt that and just do a minute or two of stretching exercises for the spine, using a simple disc that's, $20-30. The other fulcrum that we use, that's the home tool, is the Denarol. So I didn't show Erin on this one because this is a more advanced one. If you are using this home tool, it is similar in the sense that the shoulder is here, the neck is here, and the head is resting over on this side of it. So this one's more advanced, and it's not something I would have her lay on at this stage of the game. But again, it says shoulder side, and this is going as close up to the shoulder so that this part, when you're on your either fulcrum or this part where your neck is hitting is more from the mid to the lower part of the neck. So closer to your shoulders. Then I never want any of these center pieces crossing you up at the top of the neck, closer to the skull. There should be no pressure on the top of the skull. The pressure should be at the lower part of your spine. And so Erin, you stand up and turn to the side here. So that piece should be hitting you here, not up here. So that this is where the curve is happening, and the rest of the head and neck is just resting over it. So there's never compression on the back of the skull there. So wobbling, fulcrums, other home tools is things like foam rolling. Those are ways in which to stretch. We have an entire video on how to foam roll. So a home tool there that you can do, I suggest it be the longer ones. It be the ones that are longer, not necessarily thicker, so that you can do more on them. So with lack of floor space right here, I wasn't going to go through all of the foam rolling exercises, but those are components that are really important that we do for working on things that are adhesive. So they help with muscles and trigger points, but a foam roller also gets at adhesive things or tendony things that don't stretch like a muscle. So tendon is more adhesive, and parts of our fascia are more like, think about a spider web, they're more adhesive. So they don't stretch and give like a muscle belly does. And so they're more fibrous. And so we get little adhesions built up in them. And that's where a stretch doesn't necessarily do much. A foam roller works through those little trigger points or adhesions and kind of works out those sticky points, if you will, so that the stretch feels more effective. So if a fulcrum is something you've never, or a foam roller is something you've never used, then there's a very specific way to roll on them with your body weight, and you don't spend a lot of time on them. So the home tools that we focus on that are more around your spinal health are these few. There are two others that I'm not going to demonstrate here. If you're at a place where there's disc injuries, then we may recommend something that is a little bit more advanced, that's a pump. And those are ones that we do very specifically in the office with you, because they're harder to do when you usually have a more of an injured spine or a disc that we need to focus on giving support to. So I won't show you those, but know that there's other options if your spine's in a different level of health or degeneration and it needs a little bit more support and space than what these two tools provide for the neck and the low back. So again, postural support and movement, whether it's warming up for the movement and or doing the spinal exercise, are key to that longevity of your spine and the hydration it needs to stay healthy and move properly. So I want to open it up to questions because there's so many other things we could cover. But those are the main home tools that a lot of people ask about. What are you sending me home with? What might I be doing either in the future care because I'm new to my care plan or the practice, or it's old tools that it's like, man, I have those and I haven't been on mine in a couple months. So I want to be able to open this up for questions to you guys, or unmute yourself and then I'll be able to hear you. That might be easier. Does anybody have questions about those tools or pieces of home exercises that we can just ask directly, or you can ask me directly?
So if I'm driving in a car and I'm sitting in it a lot, is there anything I can do?
Driving in a car and sitting a lot. So
For my
yes,
job.
yeah, I would say making sure that your seat's forward enough that you're sitting more upright and you're not leaning too far as far as reaching too far for the pedal. I've had some people that they just sit too far from their pedals, or their seat is really kind of propped more like this. So when I think about it, I think about that the headrest is up so that when you're sitting, most of us in Denver traffic, as it's gotten back to normal, is kind of tense or can be white knuckled. What I'll notice when I'm tense is that I am leaning forward. My head is away from my headrest. So I would say, are you close enough to the steering wheel so you're really not reaching out with your low back for pedals? And there are low back supports that you could add if your lumbar support.
I have the low back support in my car, a really good one, but it's the lower my buttocks part that hurts when I'm sitting there forever.
So it might help especially if your chair, so many of these cars are like, do amazing things. Driver's seat. So yeah, then it's a matter of, can you drop the seat down? Some people's seats literally go closer to the floor and then up higher if you're a shorter person, right? If you can drop it lower or get, there's wedges or a posture cushion that you could sit on. And even ones that are for tailbone injuries, where it has that little cutout, kind of like a donut. It has that little cutout for the tailbone. That can be where that's more on your sit bone and you don't have the pressure on your tailbone.
Yeah, that's where I'm having the pressure. So I'll get one of those for when I'm driving.
Yeah. So those would be suggestions for like lower back that I would say.
Yeah.
And then some of the posture for low back is uncomfortable because people find that they're tipping forward, like in that, So for shoulder posture and head posture driving, I say hands at what I call like 4 and 7, not 2 and 10.
I've been doing, it has been working. This stopped hurting. I did change my arm.
Yeah, this tends to create a lot of this versus if you drop your arms down here, your shoulders stay more relaxed and you tend to let your head rest more against the headrest than start to push it forward. So yeah, those are great things because people spending time in the car, can be a not fun posture either. But yeah, I'd say seat cushion for underneath you if you do a lot of sitting, low back cushion so you have the support for the low back, and then just where are your hands so that your head's not up here.
Okay.
That's a great question for those that drive more or commute more or drive kids around all day. Or I have a lot of people that drive because they're salespeople. So they go to warehouses or they go to their clients. They don't have people come to them. Great question.
Thank you.
Foam rollers. There's so many different tools, but the ones that people are going to be experiencing that we send them home with were the ones I wanted to make sure we covered tonight with home tools. But there are other facets of things people use for their muscles and tissue that way. But there is specific, if foam rolling is a piece you've never done or tried, that we have a video that is all on how to foam roll. And we can cover that more or do something new if it's not as up to date on the website or on the YouTube page. Any other tools that people are using that they have questions on or that they haven't used in a long time that they wonder if they should be using? Not so much, maybe.
Well, the first three, they were tools that I was using and I stopped using them because I thought I was supposed to use them and now I'll reuse them. But yes, I use those and I use a towel when I use them.
Yeah. So I have a lot of people that start with a towel or that's what they've used because they didn't have something that was actually more posture correcting. So a towel won't mimic the two tools we showed you and used, but some people for the low back, they have to start with a towel, that those posture cushions under their low back's too intense.
No, the cushions, not the cushions. I meant for a towel when I'm doing the first, the cushions, I have never done those. I meant for the first three stretches in the neck.
Oh, got it. Yeah.
It just helped me stretch my neck. I don't know.
Exactly. Yep. And so same thing for stretching low back. A lot of people use a towel to wrap around their legs to bring their legs to them because they can't reach their legs or pull them to them if they're really tight. Or so I'd rather you use a tool to bring your legs to you laying versus you bending over forward and using your upper body to grab a hold of something. So when we do more specific stretches,
it's a great one.
I always say I'd rather you lay and bring your legs to you, especially with a low back injury or irritation or whatnot, then you bend and create a fulcrum of your low back and bend your upper body to your lower body. I'd rather you put your legs on something, right? Bring your legs to you versus you bend forward. So yeah, a towel, a lot of people have those TheraBands, anything that they kind of wrap around their leg and bring to you, that's less stress on your rest of your structure. So yeah, and a lot of people start with towels because it's softer. It kind of builds you into going into that posture doesn't feel normal. When you don't have a curve, it's not going to feel normal to do those stretches or those spinal exercises. So know that we may start there before you get a tool like this to have at home.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So figuring where you're at. So that'll be a piece and if you're new enough in the practice and you haven't even had your first re-exam yet since your first visit, then we shouldn't have talked about it yet. That comes in once you start getting more mobility and movement and we decrease some of the pain levels and some of those very big tension points to where we got to get through some of that before you can start introducing this type of stuff. So that's coming for you, Ashley, if you and Doc haven't started that yet.
Okay. Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks everybody for joining.
Are the wobble cushions available for purchase from your office?